Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
We have the great Rob Liefeld here. We lost NEAL Adams very recently, and we're going to celebrate the man a little bit while looking through Superman versus Muhammad Ali. First, I want to invite everybody to like, follow, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that bell so that we can notify you when new vids are available. That helps to mitigate the kayfabe effect, which is whenever we put a video out in the morning, by midday, early afternoon, that comic is prohibitively expensive if you can even find a copy on the old interwebs. And if you guys watch these videos to the very end, that helps us to push our video content out to YouTube, to comic book loving YouTube people who've not yet seen any of our videos. Helps grow the channel. We've gotten a little more than 60,000 subscribers recently, but the goal is 600,000, so we're only 10% of the way there. Uncle Rob, man, do you have some plugs that you want to drop to the people before we start chopping it up about Uncle Neil?
You know what? I've been around forever. I'm Rob Liefeld. I draw comics. I'm glad we're going to talk some Neal Adams today.
Cool.
I'll give a quick plug then for Robservations, your podcast, Rob, where you did a tribute to Neal Adams on a recent episode that was fantastic, and really eager to kind of just sit down and talk shop with you, because Neal Adams is a guy, I admire his work from afar, but not somebody that I knew personally or had a personal relationship with. So I look forward to digging into this with you.
Rob, did you grab this? Did you grab this thing off the racks of the 7-Eleven or something?
Ed Piskor, this is a liquor store purchased. I've talked often. So I lived, and look, you get older and you want to, rekindle those senses, those memories. And about once a year, I go to my old haunts. It's about 35, 40 minutes away. I take all the side streets to get there. The corner, so Magnolia and Broadway in Anaheim. There's the Pizza Hut is still there. The liquor store swapped with the 7-Eleven. The 7-Eleven used to be across the street. The 7-Eleven is now like a taqueria, like a Mexican place, Mexican restaurant. Like it literally says taqueria. And then the 7-Eleven grabbed the corner spot where the liquor store was, and then the grocery store became a gym, and now it's closed. But the liquor store had the very best selection. 7-Eleven had a nice group of Marvel, DC, and honestly, the 7-Eleven had the only Atlas comics I'd ever seen. They had Atlas comics, which had a brief life, but a lot of Neal Adams covers. And the first Atlas comics I ever bought was Iron Jaw, and it has a Neal Adams cover. And you're like, who's this barbarian with a metal jaw? So the bottom line is, I walked in. This Superman Muhammad Ali was the spinner rack was in the back of the liquor store. And they always knew me. They thought I was a funny kid. I'd come up with my skateboard. This is literally walk outside my house, go 3 blocks on my skateboard. I'm at the main intersection. So I go to the liquor store, and the magazines and the Treasury editions are at the bottom of the magazine racks. And yeah, Ed, when I saw this, I mean, it was like whoa. But $250 was, this is a expensive purchase. Back in 1978. So, man, I looked at it and I looked at it and I looked at it. I did not buy it immediately. I went home. I went into the couches. I begged, borrowed, and stealed. I agreed to do even more chores. I got that $250 by about 5 o'clock that night. This came home with me. And I mean, literally, I maintain this is the most beautifully illustrated comic book in the history of comic books. There is no... It gives you everything. You get personal interaction, the most beautiful faces rendering. You get cosmic warfare. You get giant fisticuffs. It is, and here's the thing that people don't realize. This is the only interior Neal Adams Superman comic he ever did. He does not have another, he did tons of Superman in action comics and Superman family covers. But this is the only Superman story, adventure comic book. And I always, Neal really gets co-opted with Batman and Green Lantern, but I've never seen Superman done better. And Superman is my favorite of the DC icons and always has been. So I was telling my wife, Neal had been drawing this version of Superman for probably 7 or 8 years. I mean, since 1970. Christopher Reeve, in my opinion, was cast to look like Neal's Superman because he was the licensed Superman of, you know, of the time, the lunch pails, the t-shirts, the calendars. I mean, here, I think, I mean, again, right here, here's my 1976 calendar, man. That's Neal Adams. You know, Neal Adams, front, back. He did some insides. He did the 1978. I mean, he was the face of DC licensing. But I mean, we can go through this. I mean, and I'm going to tell you, dudes, I was already buying X-Men because this is 1978. Terry Austin had been inking John Byrne with this very distinct line. And I'm like, these are Terry Austin backgrounds. And this is the first time ever I could tell someone else did the backgrounds. And you can tell all throughout the book. And I have pages from this book now, like originals. And you're like, those buildings have that brittle, like Terry Austin, very technical line where all of this is brushy from Nick, you know, Dick Giordano or Neal Adams. I mean, oh my gosh, like just this, like Superman and Muhammad Ali's face is right there. I mean, unbelievable. But this is the one I think that blew. Everybody stared at this for an hour, this shot right here. And I described it on the tribute show, like no superheroes whatsoever, just stuff.
Yeah. Just
people in a neighborhood looking at a farmer's market. And you're like, my eye, it's got such depth. I feel like this is Neal's strut. He was really strutting, like, I'm going to show everybody that none of you will ever touch me. Look at this cat down here with the drag, you know, taking a drag on the cigarette. I mean, these are amazing drawings. Like everything. It is so I've always maintained, and I don't know if I touched on this, and I'd love to get, once I say this, get your guys' feedback, because you came at Neal from a different period. But Neal knew at all times how good he was. This guy did not have a confidence issue. He would laugh, even in 2013, 2015, when I was obsessed with talking about, you know, my obsession with my youth hit me big time. And I knew how important he was and how influential he was. So I started just parking it, doing dinners, doing snacks, green room. And he loved it because he loves to share what he knew. But this is not a guy who he never believed there was anyone better than him, ever. Like, and with good reason. This is mind blowing. So go ahead. What do you see when you see this?
You know what? First, the part about him knowing that he was better than everyone else, I feel like that's one of the things I think about with so much of Neal Adams to me is what he meant to the industry, you know, beyond great art and great looking comics, but it was like a different mindset. I swear he taught generations of cartoonists how to think about their work and their value. Yes. And that idea that like he knew his value, that was something I think he tried to make clear to other people that were drawing comics, was like, you're doing this for people who can't do it. You know, like what you're doing on this page is worth a lot more than you realize, you know, freelancer who's eating shit from editorial or whatever, or the publishers. And I mean, that changed, I think that changed comics dramatically. Like I was thinking about him, is there a Frank Miller if there's no Neal Adams? Is there an Image Comics if there's no Neal Adams? Am I making comics if there's no Neal Adams? And like, it's a domino effect, I think, of the influence that he's had on generations.
So I did not know, the single best shot of him taking his shirt off and becoming Superman ever in the history of comics is right there. That's it. That shot is like, oh my gosh. And the lighting, the way it's colored, it's Absolutely. A little dim. And then him flying up to the Armada. I mean, the scale and the scope. But no, Jim, the thing is, here's the deal. I did not know that Frank would verify this until I watched the commentary and the kind of the behind the scenes package that's on the Spirit Blu-ray. And in 2014, Neal told me, he goes, Frank Miller was terrible. It's terrible. He goes, he'd come in and he'd want to work at a continuity. I'm like, you're not good enough. Come back next week. Come back the week after. And he'd be like, you just have no idea. He didn't know what he was doing. And it's just weird going, well, if there was anybody that I would believe when they told me that young Frank Miller was showing his shit and Frank was, and Neal Adams was dismissing it, it's Neal. I believe him because of how much talent moved through Continuity Studios. It was the chief hangout of New York in the late 60s all through the 70s. And the thing is, Frank mentions in the spirit, either in the behind the scenes or on the commentary, how much Neal Adams, without Neal Adams grinding him, without Neal Adams, telling him, you can do better than this, go back, try again. And Neal said one day he came in and I'm like, whoa, it's clicking. It's starting to click. This kid doesn't suck anymore. So Neal was instrumental with guys like Frank. I mean, people trying to get a table at Continuity and sit at the foot of the king, and no one more exemplified this than he had a brief time where he shined really bright. His name's Frank Brunner, and he did kind of early Howard the Duck, but the stuff that turned everybody on was he did Doctor Strange. So and Neal inked some of those issues, he and his studio. And when Neal died last week, Frank put up on social media his remembrance of Neal Adams, and he said specifically, when you were getting ink jobs that you didn't like from the two major publishers, what we all knew is you could run to Continuity and beg Neal if he would agree to make it a Krusty Bunkers job. And if that was the case, you knew that you would actually like some of the pages. You weren't going to like all of them, and Neal wasn't going to touch everything, but you knew a Krusty Bunkers ink job would be better than anything else you were getting at the time. And I'm like, this is amazing. And again, there's a Doctor Strange Treasury edition with all the best Frank Brunner stuff. And again, you can see when Frank definitely was influenced by Neal. So then Neal, on top of somebody who he was influenced by, was like even more mind blowing. I mean, look at these faces and this figure and this shot right here. I like everyone's ripped off this Superman with his arms across. I mean, I think it's in every issue of Brian Murray's Supreme. And I remember when I was thinking, I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is out of Muhammad Ali. But yeah, no, I mean, Neal, you just when you hear these guys, and when Neal is inking people, it's during this period. This is 1976, 77, 78, because he took an extended time to draw this book. It took a couple of years.
Cartoonist Kayfabe is brought to you by the comics that Ed Piskor and I make. The best way to support the channel is to pick up some of our comics. So right now, available in comic shops everywhere is Ed Piskor's Red Room. The Antisocial Network collects season 1 of Red Room, 4 issues, plus a lot of great bonus material. Trigger Warnings, the second season of Red Room, is in stores everywhere now. The first 2 issues, possibly 3 by the time you see this video, are out there wherever comics are sold, banned in 23 countries and 11 comic shops, but they will track these down for you if you ask them, if they don't already have them hidden behind the counter in a brown paper bag. Also available from Ed Piskor is WYSIWYG, Portrait of a Serial Hacker, A History of Computer Hacking, X-Men Grand Design, 3 oversized treasury-size editions of the X-Men story, kind of a biography of one of Marvel's best-selling characters, the X-Men, and what started the entire Grand Design tradition, and Hip Hop Family Tree, a non-fiction historical account of hip-hop, available in 4 oversized volumes and 2 beautiful boxed sets. My latest comics available in comic shops everywhere: Hulk Grand Design Monster with some beautiful variant covers, Peach Momoko, Ed Piskor, Marcos Martin, and now Hulk Grand Design Madness, again with some beautiful variant covers by Jeff Darrow, Ed McGuinness, and of course my classic version, telling 60-year history of the Incredible Hulk, written, drawn, colored, lettered by me. Also available, The Plain Janes with Cecil Castellucci, the first young adult graphic novel. And available from Image Comics, Street Angel, and several oversized hardcover collections, again like the Treasury size. These are available wherever you buy comics and books. And now back to our regular scheduled programming.
Yeah, Jim, he is the godfather of an entire era. And like I said, just the inkers alone, Terry Austin, Dick Giordano, Joe Rubenstein, Bob McLeod, Klaus Janson, they all went through Continuity. They all learned under Neal. And the nib inking, the pen inking, the sharp line, which was not really a thing. It was a ton of brush inkers. That's what the industry was about. Neal really, I've already put it back in the safe, but I won at the Heritage Auctions. Neal was inking Gil Kane on some Conan issues. And I swear to you, I have magnified, it's a head that's about this big on the page, but there is a succession of about 12 razor sharp, perfect lines coming out of his cheek that you look, is it Zipatone? It's not. It's hand, and Neal inked the entire page head to toe. That's why I wanted it. And it's a page I never believed I could own, just like owning pages from this book. because Neal kept most of this. Neal has most of this. His family has. This was his pride and joy, this book.
Did you get your pages from him that you have from this book?
No, but the minute I got it, I went over and showed it to him. It was a guy who, there are a couple of dealers who've done trades with Neal or obtained some, because again, every job, the inker got a portion. So Dick Giordano's portion, he ended up selling a few. But for the most part, like I said, I've been shown all the pages that Neal has. I mean, getting back to an earlier episode, Ed asked me if I hung on to my work. I mean, I would say 75% of this book is with the Addams family. So
let me ask you this, Rob. These treasuries, they're not a 1-to-1 in terms of aspect ratio from comic book size to the treasury size. So if it's originally drawn for the treasury, they could accommodate the art for that, not like, where they have to like add an extra 1/4 inch or something like that on like a Kirby. So what was the scale of this artwork, like the dimension?
I'm shocked. I'm going to tell you right now, it's 11 by 17.
Oh,
wow.
It is?
The pages are 11 by 17, which I was shocked at too. I was like, wait, what? My first page I ever saw, I'm like, wait, what? They're standard size? Like, yeah, he wasn't working 2-up. He wasn't working, which makes sense. I think Neal's like, what do I need 2-up for? I can make this look badass just on these parameters. Again, so you're looking at the faces. I mean, the photorealism of Muhammad Ali is really the mind-blowing aspect of this. How many photos did Neal, look at? And the page where he is winding up and screaming. This.
Oh yeah.
As a kid, I could not stop, because again, you have to understand the audience, and God bless your audience. They're so much younger. Muhammad Ali in the 70s is Michael Jordan and Tom Brady and LeBron James, like, combined. The world, the media loved him. There was a guy named Howard Cosell. There were sports programs before ESPN. There were sports programs on regularly on the weekends. Muhammad Ali was bigger than sports. He was a celebrity. He had so much merchandise too. I mean, Muhammad Ali was a gigantic megastar, like an Evel Knievel, which everyone's going, what did Liefeld just say, Evel Knievel? He was a stunt guy who was a giant celebrity in the 70s, had his own toys, merchandising, posters. Again, posters, man, that was like, if you had a poster and people bought that poster and put it on their wall, you were a megastar in that decade. And Muhammad Ali posters. And so for him to agree to do this, and again, Neal wrote this, he drew it. I mean, the story is amazing. I remember as a kid hanging on every word and like, oh my gosh, like Muhammad Ali telling Superman, you're not from Earth. You can't do this. And you're reading it going, well, you can't do it either, Muhammad Ali. You're going to get your ass kicked. You're going to get your ass kicked. So, this is his best storytelling too. I think later on in Neal's career, he would get more designy with his page stuff, to the point where I think it wasn't like, this stuff is designy in terms of it's not all grid. He's hanging panels, dangling panels, cascading panels here. The figures break out, but it all works here. I mean, this is a guy at the peak of his talents, strutting. Like, again, so when I would talk to Neal and I said, Neal, I loved when you would ink. First it was like, do you have all the Muhammad Ali stuff? He goes, I do. Okay, so we got that off the board. Like, I have most of it. I have the cover. Again, that cover, holy crap. That cover is amazing. So then I said, Neal, I loved when you inked John Buscema. I loved when you inked, there's an issue of Tarzan that he inked John Buscema, and you can tell he inked a lot of it. He inked a lot of the faces. And John and Neal, who Neal respects when he goes, oh, well, John. I mean, John Buscema, one of the all-time greats. I loved inking John. And then he said, I'm everybody's best inker, right, Rob? I mean, if I inked you, it was the best. Gil Kane, Gene Colan, John Buscema. I mean, there's nobody that I didn't give them their best inking. And I'm like, that's what I'm talking about, Jim. There's zero doubt. And I'm going to tell you, dude, I've been hunting for those John Buscema Tarzan pages. I'll snatch them up the minute I get them. Neal would keep I just discovered a Carmen Infantino cover that he inked. And you go, wait, how am I seeing so much Carmen Infantino, whose style could not have been different? But I see Neil too. Neil, especially again on Kirby, you see Neil over Kirby, but you still get Kirby. He would be faithful. But okay, wait, go back to this because this is like the single. I'm sorry, we need to dwell on.
I don't think I know the Kirby that Neil Adams inked. What was it?
He inked a bunch of Jimmy Olsen covers
Okay.
for Jimmy Olsen. There's about 6 of them, and immediately you're going to be like, "What am I looking at? It's Jack Kirby proportions and Jack Kirby, gestures and foreshortening, but it's Neil like, adjusting the faces." But they're still lantern, they're square jawed, especially on his Superman. It hit Neil, Jack's Superman that Neil inks does not look like this massively, ridiculously handsome guy. This Hunya, that's an impact page, man.
Oh, yeah.
That is an impact page. When, again, that force perspective, that down shot, again, this book is the whole book is a flex. There's not a single panel or page that is not a flex. I mean, later on, Muhammad Ali, bashing on Superman's face. I can't work this camera. There you go.
You got it.
Oh my gosh! Like I said, it's just everyone. DC reprinted it, but they did it smaller. Look at that. Look at that face. Look at that. I mean, that's like Muhammad came over to Neil's house and said, "Here, draw me, young blood," and then I'll be on my way. I mean, but this. The technology, the backgrounds, the environments, these gestures. I never felt Superman was more powerful than in this comic when he takes through and rips through the Armada. And again, that's a shot that you've seen from Alan Davis, Brian Hitch. I mean, again, when I'm sitting here, I'm slathering. Oh my gosh. Aliens. Like, oh my gosh. Like literally. Like, and here's the deal. So you asked me earlier, I did not know until later. So Neil was a guy who did this. I didn't know it until later on, but he workshopped all his pages small and Xeroxed them up. And no correlation. I have none of this talent, but Neil is a guy who would do 6 pages this size and go, hey, and sometimes he'd be like, they're good enough to ink. Like once you've blown it up and put it on the light box, it goes straight to the inker. Cause I mean, he's got really detailed renderings on his tiny drawings. He's giving you way more than I am here. I mean, he'd give you light source, he'd give you line weights. I just think the guy was a singular, amazing talent. And see, here's the deal, Jim. People immediately wanted to rush to all that he had done for creators' rights, and he did. That's a fact. But can we just dwell on like how pretty he draws and how amazing of a talent he was? That's what I was trying to say. Like I want to join you all and go into that creators championship, but let's talk why we love him. He was able to raise his voice and get people's attention. They're like, oh crap, Neil Adams just called us out. And why? Because everyone loved Neil Adams. The guy literally launched 30 imitators. And maybe that's 5 more than the other clones that came from other people. But I mean, then there's imitators and there's influence. And like my wife would be like, well, if you gushed about him, why wouldn't you try and draw like him? I'm like, because that would be embarrassing. Like there was already a whole bunch of people trying to be him and failing, but they felt really good about it, right? It's like, there was like at 1978, there's probably 10 Neil Adams guys. Okay. Some of them are dead. I don't want to crap on them because I actually liked what they did. And I don't want to get caught up in, but they weren't Neil, but they were close. They got really close. Their goal was to clearly make a page look like Neil drew it. And that really turned them on. And, again, why would I want to be just the 13th bad version of Neil Adams? I'd rather just be the best Rob Liefeld than, again, a knockoff. But again, so I mentioned Howard Cosell earlier. Again, Neil's likenesses, if he wanted to do a likeness, it was the best.
I snuck a peek over Neil Adams' shoulder one time. I think it might have been a Heroes Con. I forget where exactly. But I don't know if you ever saw him do any drawing in person, Rob.
Yes.
Tell me if it was the same sort of deal. Like, marks get put everywhere on the page, and it's not like an underdrawing of a head and here's an arm. It's just marks here, marks here, marks here. Now we're going to connect these marks. Now it's a foreshortened foot. Now it's a foreshortened leg, and then I'm going to go up here, and now the arm is in perfect contrapposto, and then it like develops like all over. It's like a Polaroid or something, man. It like materializes from like 4 different places until it becomes a drawing.
Yes. No, you described it perfectly. That's exactly how he would bounce around and generate his page. And then watching him pencil was one form of magic. And then watching him ink, because he didn't ink slow, man. He inked fast.
Yeah.
I saw him ink like Lois Lane's hair, beautiful, thick, great strokes, great lighting. And he was sitting at a convention because he was in between commissions, and pulled out some pages, had a deadline. So yeah, I mean, I just the thing also, again, his Superman, like, I mean, I'm looking through, like, Ivan Rice, I think, is one of the best illustrators that has worked in popular comics the last 20 years. He's mostly done DC work. I think everyone agrees, like, his work on Green Lantern and then recently Superman. He is 100% living in a Neal Adams, constructed world. I mean, I see, I would say 80% Neal Adams when I look at his work, and he's done a lot of work. He's a high volume guy. He's not a Neal Adams clone, but you can see the influences, the core shadows, the actual, especially when he does Green Lantern and Superman, because Neal, those looks were signature. Those faces do reflect one of the most impactful shots, the shove, more than Superman, the shove from Perry White and Muhammad Ali. You feel those. I mean, that is a movie, that is a page in full motion. Every time I look at it, it is, I mean, and again, you don't see that coming. That's why I ran home and had to get the money to buy this, because I could not risk that it wasn't there the next day. They only had one copy at the liquor store.
Did you know this book was coming out?
I did not.
Man, imagine walking into a store cold and finding this on the rack.
Yeah. And you're like, wait, I know Muhammad Ali. And it's that Neal Adams guy. And then you're like, what the? Like, this was a seismic, really seismic moment in comics. And I would love to know how it sold. I have no idea the sales figures. I'm pretty sure it did extremely well. I know Neal was very late with it. He'll tell you. But, it's like Jeff Loeb told me once, nobody remembers it's late when it's collected. It's collected then for the next 30 years, But yeah, I really, like, look at that Lois Lane, the most beautiful. He drew the most beautiful, pretty faces. And look, I can equally then jump to worshiping Frank Miller and Frank Quietly's versions of Superman, and they're uglier. And I love ugly art, ugly, not as refined and pretty people. But when it comes to pretty people, look at this page.
This was something that I always admired in his work, is like he had a variety of lines that he would employ. So you'd have, the way the crowd is drawn and everything. And now this it's a different line. It's like a different drawing to make her be angelic and spiritual and feel different than the other characters on the page. I always think that's a really interesting thing for a guy to do.
That tilt of the angle, the tilted angle. And then, like you said, the ethereal quality he's given her. You feel like that feels like a special effect, like it on the page. Yeah. Like you said, all because the line work that he approached. But I mean, he just really, people, again, this heavy duty lighting and his brand of rendering was, everyone jumped on it. Everyone jumped on it. John Buscema, I think even Neal would say, maybe one of the greatest figure artists, and especially with the amount of work that John did. But then Neal brought in this lighting, this approach to faces that went really into all these intricate details, all these different, again, the lighting, the rendering, the cross hatching, that's signature. But again, look at, what about this guy doesn't say absolute scale? Look at Muhammad Ali looking into that globe right there. It's yeah, I mean, there's a reason, man. These are sacred. These are just freaking sacred. I'm so glad you guys have a great copy. But every punch thrown in here I mean, you feel it. You feel all. I mean, when he's taking out Superman right there and punching him. I mean, this is. It's like when Alex Ross did his double. Alex Ross did a bunch of Treasury editions towards the late
Mm-hmm.
'90s, Superman, Batman, and I felt comfortable enough because I was hiring Alex at the time. So what are you doing? Superman doesn't punch anybody in your book. He just lifts things. He literally just lifts things. And you get a bunch of your trademark like worm's eye view of him lifting away from the ground or the bird's eye view of him settling. I'm like, dude, like again, Neil Adams knew that we wanted people throwing punches, not just gliding and cascading. I mean, look at that armada. Again, I mean, this is just an amazing piece of storytelling. That's what I guess Neil is a great director. I would have loved to have backed a Neil Adams directorial job. He did a bunch of animatics, a bunch of storytelling, a bunch of commercials that we couldn't even begin to list. So he did move, he did have some influence on camera work, but I mean, he's just a great director.
There
I mean,
is
again,
there is one movie that he did, I think, in the late '70s called "Death to Pee Wee Squad," and you will find a scene where Gray Morrow and Dennis Cohen are involved in a knife fight. Gary Groth, my humble publisher from Fantagraphics, is in a restaurant sequence with them. Might be able to find it. It ended up getting distributed by Troma Pictures, the Toxic Avenger people.
so here I am being schooled by Ed Piskor on Kayfabe. I love it. I'm gonna go find it. I did not know that he did. So you're telling me he did like a B movie,
Yeah,
like Trauma?
yeah.
Trauma is
Like he made it in like the '70s or early '80s or something, and it didn't even get distribution until like the '90s.
okay.
And so it's young. I mean, it's Gray Morrow and Dennis Cohen dressed up like a hood with a switchblade doing a kung fu fight. It's like a 42nd Street grindhouse flick,
Oh my gosh.
and it's Neil Adams. Like I mean, it's his voice. Like he's the main guy, and I think his kids are in it.
Oh crap. Okay. I have to.
We'll
I have to
we'll,
leave
we'll
now.
talk.
I have to leave now and go find it. But yeah. So like I said, the guy's a great storyteller, great director. I mean, look at the the impact of that kick. I mean, again,
Sick.
I was there in 1978. Okay, I'm 11. I'm absorbing this. It's blowing my mind. I can't believe a comic book looks this good. Uh, I mean, again, this reveal that he pulls off the Muhammad Ali mask. I mean, it's never lost its awe on me. It's never, and pretty much anybody around that time, no one will ever fight you if you say, I hold this up as the greatest illustrated comic of all time. I've never seen someone like, I'm going to take you on. Let me show. No, that's not going to work. This has the crown because it's I mean, look at that Muhammad Ali. Look at that mouth, that snarl. And these aliens. I mean, again, it was he was just the great thing about older Neil is he became more gregarious. He leaned into being friendlier, and he really enjoyed when he decided to tour. And I know he had to be talked into touring. And then once he started touring, man, again, like we went out to dinner with them in Cleveland, Joey and myself, and Neil and Marilyn. And the next day, Marilyn had written out an entire full page thing like, Dear Rob, here's how we approach conventions, and here's the stuff we ask for. And I'm like, this is so sweet. Like, she's like, they were sweet people. And I think Neil just enjoyed. That's it. That, man, this shot is one of the most imitated shots of all time. And it existed for the first time right there. But yeah, I just can't underscore Neil's Superman was on school supplies, notebooks, folders, 3-ring binders, thermoses, calendars. I mean, he was. I mean, look at that lighting. I mean,
That's
again,
incredible.
and imagine, we would be blown away if this book came out today.
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
totally.
so now this guy was drawing this book in 1976 and 1977. It got published this comes out January of 78. This is a winter arrival. This is like first week of January. So he kicks off the year. It's many people go, what's your favorite year in comic? I'm like 1978. Between the John Byrne, Terry Austin X-Men and this job, it doesn't get better than, and I really loved where so many of the Marvel comics were going at the time. But this is again, this is just sick. This would be the best comic it was published in any year that it was published. And there's another face you'll see that's a wildly imitated face in the entirety of comic books. But people have tried to imitate this next shot, and it's never had the same. Like when I saw him fly through all these spaceships screaming like it was hurting him, and this right up here when he's this special effect that he draws peeling away the light. I mean, again, I could go on and on. You don't get to, like, I mean, obviously Bill Sienkiewicz does not exist but for Neal Adams, who clearly took the master's guidance and went off and did his own thing. But, you know, those early Moon Knights, it was he did the best kind of extension of Neal, because Bill's people were longer, a little more gangly, but he took all the right things. And then of course he started painting and invited other influences into his work. But I mean, again, this is it'll excite me and it'll bum me out at the same time if a bunch of these find their way to the auction block in the next few years, because I know, you know, that for the most part these are like in the hands of Neal's family.
Which page did you have?
It's got everything. Like, and again, it's got Terry Austin backgrounds, like signature Neal, like that is a signature Neal Adams Superman face. Two great figures, and the story again rising up, and then your eye goes down here, and then you go through here, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I have a thumbnail of that ethereal shot that you love, and the guy who actually owns that girl with the ethereal kind of angel that we were talking about, that guy put that up on Facebook the other day and said, I'm the guy who owns this. And it was like, wow, like people are starting to show, like, here's what I have. Here's, you know.
Do you have other Neal Adams pieces?
I have some Green Lantern pages, and I have that Conan stuff that he inked over Gil Kane. And then he did a giant, I have a Green Arrow that he drew for me that's about this big, on this big of paper. And then he drew inside some of my comics. I would commission him to draw Wolverine and Cyclops screaming, and, you know, because I just love that. I would always want to, whenever I saw him at a show, I wanted to buy something from him. I wanted to show him, and I wanted to show him in Maryland. I didn't take him for granted. Like, I always wanted to leave with something. And so I would make sure that I'd get a hardcover and he'd drawn it. And like I said, I did that since about 2013 on, and kind of figuring, you know, we can't take this guy for granted. And he's a gregarious guy. And oh no, I mean, like literally, there was no one. I'm not going to mention names, but there was no one you could ask him about that he did not have a story about. Because again, they all, you know, he would ask me some of the other people I liked, and I'd segue into John Byrne, knowing that John Byrne owes a lot of his career to Neal's style and work. And Neal would laugh. John Byrne, yeah, he's a character. I go, what do you think? He goes, well, I mean, what do you think? I mean, is there a John Byrne without a Neal Adams? And you're like, okay, we're done. Like, you know, he just, because what are you gonna do? Because at the end of the day, he's like, hey kid, did you draw Superman Muhammad Ali? I don't think you did. Take a walk, take a hike. And this isn't, like I said, this isn't even going into his Dead Man work, his Green Lantern, his X-Men. Right here at the foot. Okay, his entire X-Men run again is like, wow, the precursor. Without this, you literally don't get the John Byrne X-Men. But you know, Roy Thomas writes extensively. It's not how will you draw. They put Neal on the X-Men to try and get him to bump sales. Sales did not go up. It was just, and that speaks to more, I think, the X-Men concept. Just people had rejected it whole hog because the 5 X-Men are boring. They're not exciting characters, and when you know, you likely weren't going to buy an X-Men book over an Avengers or a Fantastic Four or a Justice League title. And Neal is, there's that run that he did on X-Men is the precursor flex to what he does here. He's really showing you, like, I can outdraw all you MFers. Screaming faces, pterodactyls. The Angels never look better. It's the only time you go, wow, Angel's a cool character. Like, well, that's how Angel should look, a guy with wings. You know, so he had a tremendous confidence. And I think, again, because my wife would say, well, what happened to him when he left comics? I said, he was getting paid tons of money in the advertising world. And I mean, who doesn't want to, hire Neil at the time? The comics, once he left, he's in all these comics on my rack with ads for Hot Wheels, for Saturday morning cartoons, for sneakers. Like, he just, it's why, like, guys like Jeff Matsuda and Chap Yap go to animation, because they can scribble on a piece of paper this big for 90 minutes and get paid as much as it takes to fill up an entire 11 by 17 comic book page. And they can do like 6 of these a day. It's a good living. It's a great living, especially if you're going to build a family and you bristle like so many of these young artists did. And I kind of am pivoting and segueing, but this isn't not why Neil left. I think Neil just saw like an opportunity to dominate another field, because by the time he did this, he really he stayed away for a while, and this was him kind of returning to comics. He hadn't been in comics for a long time. He had left. Eric Larson, like, really put the other day, like, as I was just coming into collecting comics, Neal Adams had left, like in 1974, 1973. But that Batman stuff, Ra's al Ghul, that's stellar. Anybody he touched, he put his imprimatur on, so much so that the next, that version of that character became who everyone's still drawing. Like Green Lantern, everyone's still drawing his Neil. A lot of people, most people are still drawing Neal Adams Green Lantern. So you don't want me to continue. I'm blathering. Bottom line, we just shared. I will maintain till my grave, that is the best looking comic book ever. It has everything: action, adventure, sci-fi, fisticuffs, a really clever story that I really, how do you have Superman and Muhammad Ali fight with stakes, with consequences? And he figured it out. So,
Rob, yeah. I have one last question about Neal Adams. Did he ever talk to you guys about Image Comics, either early in the process or after the fact? Was that something that he was, excited by or proud of you guys for doing?
Yes. Or? No. So Jack Kirby, Neal Adams, and Frank Miller. It's really funny. Frank gave a speech at San Diego Comic-Con. He was like the keynote speaker. I want to say 94, 95, and he had everyone acknowledge us. Frank Miller, like, had us stand up at our table and gave us, our due. Like, let's hear it for the guys from Image Comics who struck out on their own and created a brand new kind of environment for all of us. And this is the guy who was, who had done it before we did it by going to doing Sin City with Dark Horse. And, but Frank, Jack, and Neil are the 3 guys who went out of their way to say, we're really proud of you guys. Hey, I'm really proud of what you guys did. Hey, come on. We were seen as stepping away from corporate comics and taking our destiny into our own hands, right? So, and like I said, Todd's whole vibe was, it's me against Marvel. He made it like Marvel offended me. I'm, against them. And I was like, no. Like, when people would start talking shit to me about Marvel, I'm not offended by them. Like, even in the old interviews I look at, there's nothing more than me going, it was time for me to move on. Because I would say, like, me doing Fantastic Four after X-Force would have been a step down. I had the juice. I had, try something else, take a risk, keep pushing in this direction. So yeah, Neil was very generous. Like I said, Frank Miller and Jack Kirby, which I just kind of lumped them all 3 together. They were always, whether it was Frank did it publicly at this giant, I don't know if it was the Eisners, but it was at it was huge room at San Diego, tons of tables, and Frank, I'm pretty sure it was the Eisners, and we were just attending. So, but yeah, it was nice to hear. But again, and then at the same time, knowing we knew we could look into the eyes of everyone who wanted us to face plant. And, again, I still haven't named all the names of the people who would, like, literally come up to me. Yeah, you guys are going to be out of business in 6 months. This isn't going to work. And you're like, okay. Like, it was just so a foregone conclusion to them. So
So fantastic. I think the first time I had some Neil Adams comics growing up, but it was like Armor and Jason Rinker Toy Boy and stuff like that. The first time I heard the guy's name mentioned was in an interview you did for Wizard Magazine, issue 36, 37, one of those, man. So it's such a pleasure to have the chance to hang out with you, Rob, and to celebrate the man that spawned generations and generations of cartoonists. We're never going to stop thinking about the guy, and we're never going to stop singing the praises of all of his contributions. And it was really, really fun to go through this one, what you consider to be the greatest comic ever illustrated.
In super fanboy mode, hey, thank you for inviting me to go through this comic with you. I mean, I know it's just a lot of gushing, but the truth, like I said, the quintessential superhero handsome face. And there's no angle. He was unafraid. You could see through this book. 3/4 view, up shot, down shot. There's no angle. You know, we all have our safety nets. He didn't have one. He's like, I'll draw it this way now. And I'd be surprised if, I'm sure there's some story where he's like, no, Neil, like, taped himself to the ceiling and drew a page upside down. I would totally believe that if someone told me, just so that he could say, you know, I drew that page upside down. So anyway, yeah, thank you. This was so much fun.
Rob, where can people find you, and what do you have coming out that you want to let the Kayfabe audience know about before we
So
split?
the Kayfabe audience, look out for Profit Remastered #1 coming out end of July, early August. Look for it. Your two hosts contributed kick-ass pages to it, along with a bunch of great comic book talent, because it's the Image Comics 30th anniversary. I am having a blast celebrating it. After that, we're doing a Brigade remaster. The two of you guys are helping out on that too. I appreciate it. Here's the deal. I'm on social media. I'm on Twitter. It's my full name, Robert Liefeld. On Instagram, I'm at Rob Liefeld. And then I have my podcast, Robservations with Rob Liefeld, where I talk comics like you guys. It's my passion. It's my disease. And I share that with everybody.